This is Solo in the Shop. On today's episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about my computer science background and how that applies to my new woodworking business. Whether you are a hobbyist, weekend warrior, making commissions for friends and family, or already a full-time maker, if you are solo in your shop, this is the show for you. I'm Ronald Lowe's, the host of Solo in the Shop, a woodworking podcast discussing everything from current projects, tools and techniques, decisions around running a small business, and much more. So if you frequently find yourself alone and covered in sawdust, follow my journey and we can be solo in the shop together. Hello, friends. The shop is hopping. I finally got a custom order from the furniture company that has my tables. I had made a table for them that was, I'll call it a spec table. They just said make a really big live edge table. And I realized that table probably is too big for most people's home. So they've got it in a showroom, and I set up a web page where their salespeople could configure a custom-sized table. They can pick legs, they can pick species and dimensions and things like that, and it tells them what the wholesale and retail prices are going to be. So the first one of those showed up yesterday, so I'm excited about that. It's nice because it's a sale, it's a project where I didn't have to do the selling, right? The cost of acquisition was zero for me. So that's a nice thing to have. So I hope that continues. I'm wrapping up a couple tables this week, and I'm also bringing in a bunch of tables from a store that is closing that I had put tables in there. They were selling them on commission, and that store is closing. They've got another location, but it's not as big, so they're not taking all the big tables that I made and putting them in the other location. So I'll be trying to unload those on Facebook Marketplace imminently. So I wanted to talk today about how my computer science background has helped me in my woodworking. It's always an interesting reaction when people learn that I spent 35 years programming and the last 19 years writing website code for kayak.com, and then retired from that to start my woodworking business full time. And I don't want to go into like an exhaustive explanation, but I wanted to just convey some of the things that I view as benefits from all of that computer experience to getting this woodworking business off the ground. So the obvious ones are what I will start with. And so problem solving is one. Being able to look at what needs to be done and break it down into steps, into component pieces, not get overwhelmed by the overall problem, but really kind of slice and dice that so that each piece is manageable and work my way through it. It was the same way with software. If you say, write this whole application, that's a little daunting. But if you say, all right, I'm going to start with the login screens, and then I'm going to have a profile page, and then I'm going to have a shopping page. Take each of those one step at a time. The shopping page, I need products, I need categories, I need product details, I need add to cart, I need a cart. So those kind of things. The other obvious one is math skills. Obviously writing code, tons of math, and getting into woodworking really required a lot of centering things, calculating 90-degree angles, figuring out other angles for legs and joinery and things like that. And so the geometry and the algebra all came very easily to me just from years of practice with numbers. Another obvious one was, and kind of where I started, was writing my own website. I've created the site. I've created the tools that I use for tracking orders and the customer portal. I mentioned the retail page that allows sellers to configure a custom table and see what the wholesale and retail prices are going to be. So that's been a cost saving for sure. And I'm pretty confident in my ability, so I don't need to hire somebody. I don't need to explain what I want and make sure that they understand my vision. I can see my own vision very clearly. Being familiar with computers has helped me with CNC work and with my Shaper origin. The Shaper comes with online tools for designing shapes and cutting paths and things like that. And being familiar with SVGs and vectors and things like that made that very intuitive. Now, some of the things that are maybe less obvious, but are things that I kind of laugh about, that I'm like, wow, this really is a transferable skill. One is A/B testing, trying out different things to see what works best, whether it's a different tool, a different technique, a jig. There are plenty of times where I look at a problem and I say, hey, there's 3 ways I could solve this. Let's try each of those and see which one seems the most reliable, most consistent. So A/B testing is one area that I took from computer science that I use a lot in the shop. Troubleshooting is another one. Trying to figure out, if a joint doesn't line up, or if I'm just having difficulty with some aspect of the construction, being able to eliminate possible causes and narrow down until the problem gets solved. Is it the tool? Is it the wood? Is it the angle? Is there human factors? Is there a domino that is a hair longer than I thought it was going to be, and that's pushing the joint apart? Has happened. And being able to troubleshoot those kind of things definitely is something that I learned along the way. Another one is just quality assurance. I'm used to writing code and then imagining it being used incorrectly to try and anticipate what could go wrong. I also want to make sure that code that I write matches the spec. It matches for color. It matches for function. It fits in with the overall aesthetic of whatever I'm working on. And all of those things apply for furniture. I want to make sure that even if somebody sits on a table that's really just meant to be a side table, are they going to break it? Is it put together strong enough that it can take some abuse? Now, that doesn't mean I need to make it bulletproof, because, there's what I'll call acceptable use. But doing more than the minimum, I think, is the key in that regard. But then I'm also looking at it for scratches. I'm looking at it for gaps. I'm looking at it for what I'll call structural integrity. And so before anything goes out, I want to be able to check something and make sure that it is of the quality that I'm trying to produce on every single table. And then the last thing that occurs to me is a thing that in school we called it G.I. Joe, which stood for garbage in, garbage out. And more recently, I've seen on social media the idea of play silly games, win stupid prize, or play stupid games, win stupid prizes, play silly games, win silly prizes. And basically it's, if you start with something that's not good, no matter how much you work on it, it's not going to be good at the end. So using crappy wood, crappy tools, insufficient legs, hardware, glue, joinery products, finish. If you add garbage to your project, you're just going to get garbage out. And so there really isn't a way to cheap out and make something great. If you cheap out, you're going to make something cheap. if you go with quality, you can make quality. That applies to the materials, it applies to your tools, it applies to your training. You need to know what you're doing and you need to be able to execute. And if that means practicing a few times on something, so that you can build that skill, that's what you need to do. But when you're making a piece that's going to go to a customer, every aspect of it needs to be quality, and the quality in is going to make the quality come out. So those are the things that occur to me when I think about how my computer science career translates into woodworking. There's a lot more artistry and expression and beauty, I think, in the woodworking. But what I just covered, I think, are the skills and the attributes of a computer geek and how that kind of naturally translates into woodworking. It's a short episode. That's what I have for you this week. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Until I do, stay safe in your shop. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to reach out to me at SoloInTheShop@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you got value from it and would like to help the show grow, I'd appreciate a review wherever you listen. Be sure to check the show notes for links to my socials or any extra stuff we discussed today. Until next time, stay safe in your shop, and we'll talk again soon.